Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person-years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. My guest today is Ivan J. Schwartz, the COO of AMCS Group North America, a global leader in sustainable cloud technology. He also serves as an adjunct professor and board advisor at Jacksonville University, mentoring graduate students in AI, cybersecurity, and technical project management. Ivan traces his technology origin from early 80s bulletin board systems to founding a company that built graphic multiplayer BBS games, and he also scripted a graphics language which he says predated HTML. They published about 33 titles across the global BBS market before the internet rapidly displaced it around 1995. He then shifted from internet gaming into business software, automating insurance flows, and later working in commodity and reverse logistics industries, including forestry, natural gas, and waste recycling at AMCS, citing route optimization across 770,000 trucks that saved about 17 to 20 gallons of diesel per truck. He discusses why ERP adoption is hard, advocating game design style gradual introduction, putting people first, and having product teams do end user jobs. He emphasizes vendor relationships over feature requests, AI governance and risk frameworks, a person plus AI stewardship model, and evolving education or career paths toward broad skills, clear communication, domain knowledge, and knowing what good looks like. Listen on. Hi, Ivan. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hey, Shiv, how's it going? Happy to be here, brother.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the moment I heard about you and all the things that you've been doing, I wasn't sure whether the typical format of about 45 minutes to an hour is sufficient, but let's dive in. And
Sure.
We'll start with your origin story, I know, things that you've been doing, how you got associated with technology, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, the origin story goes way back in the old early 80s, right? I started in the age of computer sitting on your desk or dialing into what was called a bulletin board system. This was before the internet. Very few, maybe a handful of people on your podcast will know what that is. But if two computers wanted to talk, you had to dial it on a phone, connect them. They had to do a little handshake. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the AOL noise that it makes. And that allowed two computers to talk over text. And I was amazed by that. But then I realized when it was just restricted to text or ANSI, I was disappointed, right? That was the burgeoning age of 16 colors, 640 by 480 high res back then. People wouldn't even know. And I was just convinced there was a way to do this over the wire. So I started my first company. I was probably way too young, called Lacatha Industries, and we wrote what was called doors, but they were really games for bulletin board systems. And the thing that gave us our differentiator is that first of all, they were graphic. And secondly, the sysop could participate. So when the BBS shelled out to run the game and the COM package shelled out to run the client side, they would be on both sides. So the sysop could interact with their player in real time, which most of the other pseudo graphic games at that time it would just go to a blank screen. The sysop couldn't see anything. System operator is what this stands for. And it was kind of anticlimactic for this because the reason why sysops got in the game is they had a little bit of a voyeurism where they could watch their users log in, get files, post messages, and all that stuff. And that went phenomenal, right? We created a graphic language called DDoFX, which is the Digital Dynamics Online FX language. And it was years ahead of HTML. It was all scripted. You could do events and all that stuff. And we were building all kinds of stuff. We had 33 game titles, 200,000 bulletin board systems where FidoNet had to send packages of data around the world. The internet was just a pipe dream. And people were paying long distance charges, passing stuff around. It was a very small 200,000, market cap total globally, but we dominated it. We were right at the edge of a product called Major BBS, where you could put 8 or 9 phone lines into a single computer and run multi-user at the time, and it was just going crazy. Roll ahead by about 95, internet came in, put a bulletin ahead of bulletin board systems in a year. So we went into the internet world, tried to do gaming and stuff there for a while. It was fairly successful until the big boys got in. I couldn't compete with a budget. I got asked to try to go do some business software. And when I saw the appalling state of business software compared to the user experience demands of the gaming world, I had to do something. And when I was in the insurance industry first, completely automated the insurance, local vehicle insurance and stuff, and just saw the entire business world was just so far behind where technology could be. And literally never looked back. I love the gaming industry still, but as far as trying to drag the business world kicking and screaming still into the modern age, the digital age, has been my passion. When I got over the tech part of it and fell into wealth industries. So I fell into a company called Baywood Technologies that was servicing the forestry industry, pulp and paper. And that's where technology met the real world. And there was a real impact of hauling bulk supplies over a scale system. And I saw my software and I fell in love with it. So the original origin when I sent out my first game, Battle Grid, I'm not sure if you can see it on the wall there, but it was headlined in the newspaper. It was very exciting for me as a young guy. I had gone to the post office, opened up my little PO box for my new company. There were 3 keys in there that opened up 3 giant lock boxes, which were bags full of orders. That's when I realized that stuff that I invested time in was worth money. And then when I got to the business world and got to the wealth industries where people were pulling raw materials and effectively changing and impacting the world, I just fell in love with it. At that point, I fell in love with the business model of how technology evolves efficiencies. Never looked back. So I went from that gaming into natural gas, into forestry, into waste and recycling, and now into all of the core commodity-based industries here at AMCS. And we're always looking for ways to make it more efficient, make it work better. Because what people don't understand is it's a reverse logistics problem. The human race has spent thousands of years getting really good at either growing something out of the ground or digging something out of the ground. That mine or farm doesn't move. It's in the same place. It's easy to build logistics to get that material to move, as opposed to the waste and recycling, where I build all these products, send them out into the world, and then I have to get them all back in an efficient way where I can break them down and put them back into the cycle. That's a hard problem that I've absolutely loved being a part of. And every time like for instance, AMCS, we have 770,000 trucks globally under management. And we save just through optimization, just giving them a better route or more efficient, something on the terms of 17 to 20 gallons of diesel per truck. That's so they're doing the same service, but they're not burning that fuel into the atmosphere. So there's a very good environmental ESG model there. Plus bottom line efficiencies. You could multiply that by seven. So that's a lot of money in diesel that capital isn't having to be invested. So that's been where I've lived most of my time and seeing very similar patterns of difficulty and failure. The challenge around deploying an ERP system into your company is just terrible for companies. So I wrote a book to try to demystify that. I just think it's an educational thing. We're seeing very similar adoption concerns around AI, so I've jumped in front of that. I realized it even goes all the way back to the educational system that we need to change the way that we're educating people for that generation. So I jumped in like 4 years ago. I was not an adjunct professor, and I just jumped in. A good friend of mine, Matt Berseth, says, "Hey, can you cover for me?" And I've never looked back from that little journey. So now I'm deeply involved in trying to make sure that there's a path for people who, if you went into computer science to be a programmer, well, there's no path for you now. What are you going to do? And we're building what that path is. There's still a place for people. I'm a huge believer in person plus AI strategy, right? I call it the stewardship model. So I go around a lot teaching and speaking on and helping companies understand how to adopt AI successfully. You know, they spent all of last year with a 95%, according to MIT, failure rate at adopting. That's a pretty high
Yeah.
failure rate for
Yeah.
everyone to still be throwing jillions of dollars into a tech. So let's figure out how to do it right. So I want companies to invest money smartly in technology and get out of the hype game. And it is doable. It's easy. So that's where I'm paying it forward. Like very similar to how we talked in the pre-show here. We're at an age where we need to start giving back to the industry that gave to us.
Yeah, wonderful. And definitely, there's a lot to unpack. So just rewinding a little bit, uh, it's really interesting that you started in the gaming industry and then got into all these different industries and the hard problems of recycling or ESG and so on. Uh, this is one question that I've always had. When you have games, there is very little that the game developer needs to spend in terms of training, the gamers. Whereas if
That's
you
right. The user
when,
experience mean
yeah,
how easily they can just get into it. That's right,
yeah,
by design.
yeah, but when you want to have somebody adopt an ERP rolling out within an enterprise or even a behavioral change like recycling and so on, why is it so hard? Is there something from the gaming industry that would help uh,
Yeah,
adopt
the
it?
actual product design process that
Yeah.
game designers take in,
Uh-huh.
it's a product methodology.
Hmm.
They're designed from the get-go to introduce mechanics at a adoptable rate. I would say better than any industry, the gaming industry understands human condition for OCM, organizational change management, and knows that I have to introduce these mechanics slowly,
Mhm.
give you an opportunity to repeat, give you an opportunity to master, and then introduce the next mechanic, and then introduce the next mechanic. And the business world has just never adopted that out of convenience because it's accepted to allow a button to whirligig for 30 seconds.
Okay.
When you look in the gaming, if it's human perceivable, 200 milliseconds or more, it's rejected wholly. The game never gets, you'll never hear the name of the product. So the
Hmm.
user experience demands of the consumer is very different than they are in the business world. And the rate and ability for adopting the product is different. So the users, the expectation of the product consumers has changed the gaming world. But the expectations in the business world have not seemed to carry forward. And it's because the focus is different. If you're buying a piece of software, you're less worried about the user experience or the adoption of your employees. You're more focused on the output, the efficiencies, the automations that it produces. How does it free up free cash flow? You're more interested in those targets. So that's where business has focused it, right? So at the end of the day, the consumer has set the bar with which they're complaining about. So that's part of the education process is you kind of get what you get. You have to expect more. Set
Hmm.
that demand into the
Yeah.
market. It'll adapt. It will.
So is that the reason you put people first in your people, places, and things as a strategy for enterprise ERP or rolling out uh, OCM
Yeah.
kind of changes?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's people's everything, right? I understand the need to automate, but you don't automate people out completely, right? Even in this new age of person plus AI that I'm preaching, if you got rid of people altogether, then what are you doing it for?
Mm.
We're doing this. We people are should be the top of mind across everything, every decision. How is it impacting people? How is it benefiting people? You know, you see some of the greatest companies kind of hit around this with different mantras, like you treat your employees well, they'll treat your customers well. So your employee needs to be your number one focus as a business owner. If if you're not starting your journey with people, then I don't understand the point of the journey.
So, are there any lessons for uh, designers or developers to keep people in mind? I mean, I used to follow this person called Neer Ayal, who wrote this book called Hooked, which said, how do you build habit-forming products?
Hmm.
And then after a few years, he did a 180-degree turnaround, and his next book was called Undistractable, saying that I want to regain control as a person and not let it go to the designers to manipulate me. And he started that way. So in these situations, and also when people don't know that they are being manipulated,
Hmm.
all the recent the cases against the big social media firms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So then, of course, we get into the responsible technology and so on. But before that, are there things that designers or developers could learn to develop and have this empathy for the users?
Yeah, so one of the best tactics I've implemented within the businesses I've been is the software designers, the product owners, the product managers, the folks thinking about it, go do that job. The thing that you're building the software for, go do the job. It'll change the way you do it. If you've got a lead developer in a team that's working on the mechanic, have them do the job for which that screen or that piece of software is designed to work
Wow.
for. Hands on. Because I've seen this firsthand. In other words, there's been a bug. Users have complained about it. Users have complained about it. Oh, it's low. It's priority 3. It's priority 4. And maybe this speaks about a lot. I was a developer. This speaks a lot about developers. If you then put the developer in the chair of the user and say, okay, I hear what you're saying. It's low priority. Like being able to put in post payments back manually from lockboxes in the old day.
Okay.
And they had it where you had to move the mouse and click and type it in, do a search, remove the mouse. Say, okay, here's a stack of just 200. This person does thousands a day. I'm going to ask you to set the developer down, do the 200. By the end of that day, it'll be the most efficient screen you've ever seen because then those priority 3s bubble up to priority 1 because it's now hindering the developer. You're going to have to cause friction. I have a saying across our organization, there is no change without pain. If you're not in any kind of pain, why would you ever change anything that you do? So you have to create structured pain, not like in a sadistic nature, but you want to create enough friction so that everyone can experience that friction. Otherwise, innovation doesn't happen, creativity doesn't kick in. No one can really sympathize with the pain. Everyone sees situational bias from their perspective. That developer is more interested in the hard work of storing that data in such a special way, not worried about the user's experience because that's not really impacting him. But having to overcome this data storage problem that's sitting on his plate for 3 weeks, that's impacting him until he has to do that work. And then they see it. And now there's something to be solved. So my recommendation is to give your lead developers and your product owners direct experience in the role or the job that they're trying to design the software for. It sounds like yeah, no duh. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how much software is being built by people who've never really done the job for which they built the program.
Because the other expectation that you see is also this impatience. Everybody wants solutions immediately.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but for actually being immersed in the role of the users or understanding that will take time. Are there ways to either accelerate that or do that together?
Yeah. So this also involves tying your end user with your product folks, putting the customer closer to the product design organization. Again, everybody wants everything now, but they just think about the thing that they see. So sometimes that's flipping the narrative we just talked about of putting the developer in the chair of the user. If you have a sophisticated user, if you're co-innovating or co-developing with your customer who's Why is this taking so long? Bring them closer to the development process so they can see the entire tail or what's below the iceberg in that water. All the testing, all of the integration testing, all of the stuff that has to happen to make that one little button that seems like just dropping a checkbox on there, and all the upstream impacts of all the reports it might break and all the billing process it might break. Just bring them to one of those journeys, one of that, just get them through that life cycle once. They will then begin to appreciate the sheer effort to do it. Because if you're in a SaaS world where I live, every customer, I'm your
Yeah.
customer. They don't realize that your product, well, they realize it intellectually, but they don't get it. They don't feel it, that it's sitting on 2,000 other customers' environment. And what I'm about to do isn't just impacting you. It could impact thousands. I have to wrap feature flags around it. If I'm customizing just for you, does it make sense for this to even be in my product? So you have to kind of have open conversations. And that's building trust. One of the big things I say in my book is stop buying software, buy your vendor. Because the software you're shopping for today isn't what you're going to need 18 months from now. So
Right.
build the relationship with your vendor. And again, it comes back to people. Two people getting together, understanding each other's needs and services. You have to keep the lights on. They're trying to get a good deal. If you build that trust, you will get that streamlined approach with your customers. So that would be my advice, is invest time in that relationship first before we start doing the order taking back and forth. Because without understanding, you're going to end up destroying that relationship altogether because they're not going to get it and you're not going to understand why they're trying to change your software. I would offer to businesses, if you've got a good vendor that you trust, stop pitching solutions. Pitch the problem. Please let your software vendor do what you hired them to do, is to come up with the best software solution for your problem. So many customers come in and go, I want a checkbox right there. Okay. And if you're going to pay me, most vendors go, yeah, I like money. Here's your checkbox. Well, now it doesn't do anything, or it's broke all this stuff. And then you iterate through that spoon feeding process. By about the 10th problem, tempers are hot. Nobody wants to pay each other. They're about ready to separate. It's like, guys, come to the table, build the relationship, understand, tell them that you need a way to report on a subset of your customers in the accounting side. Give them the problem you're trying to solve. They can think about it all upstream and downstream. Stop offering your solutions. I know you're very comfortable with your business and how to run it, but unless you're in the software business, you hired these guys to build your software. Let them do that. That's tough to get over because you're pretty sure your differentiator in your business, especially if you're successful. In fact, the more successful you are, the less likely you are to adopt that mentality because you're successful for a reason, right? I'm doing this because I'm better than everybody else. My way is the best way, and you should do what I want to do. It's a dance that is solved through relationship. Build the relationship.
So how does it play out for a developer or a solution publisher who needs to cater to, like you said, different clients? It's a SaaS environment, and building something for one versus something that is more aligned with the product roadmap or the solution roadmap.
To me, the friction of that depends on how mature the product is. If you've got a very mature product development organization where you're a process first, in other words, before you've even looked at the tech and you've looked at any of the systems or what tools are going to go, you've designed the process, you understand the flow, you can see how it works within your system, and then you decide a technology if you see someone jump into the tech right away, big warning sign. Big warning sign. They're not really a mature product development. They're a tech organization. They're more about features. They're buying features and plugging them in. They're wrapping them with feature flags. And before you know it, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 5 years, you have this gangly thing that is so complex, so difficult to maintain that it's got so much technical debt built into it. It can't move. So to me, it depends on where you are on that spectrum, because I've seen really mature organizations that understand their process that won't talk about the tech. I don't want to see a screen. I want to see the problem. I want to show you our process. Where and how do you flow this process? Which one of our config switches do you have turned on? And let me make sure that it's compatible. And now we can look all the way upstream and see what the impact of your change is going to be. And I'll either talk you off the ledge of going, it sounded good in your head, but let me show you why it's not. Or you would have brought me something very exciting that I can put into roadmap and make it happen. I mean, it's going to come down to being very close with your customers and having that relationship and trust.
Academics also somewhat similar in the sense they do have a lot of processes since you're an adjunct professor. When you want to bring in some changes or bring in a new course or even maybe some new topics in your course, there's a lot of approvals, and by the time it gets through all that, and then the students are also going to take maybe a semester to go through all that and then kind of feel comfortable. Uh, how do you compress that cycle time?
That's a great question because the reality, if you look at higher education, except for very specific research universities, I would say let's carve those guys out of this conversation. But the majority are fundamental production shops. They bring people in and they teach fundamentals. They teach, I'm not going to say the basics. I'm going to stick to that word fundamentals. The fundamentals of mathematics, the fundamentals of engineering, things with which you would build very creative solutions on top of. And if you're looking to change fundamentals, rightfully so, you have to have an abundance or a preponderance of evidence to say why this fundamental no longer applies. Now, so to me, that's a very productive system that protects those fundamentals from just wild speculation. But when you have paradigm shifts is where you see the high friction, like what we're experiencing now with AI, that is causing a lot of friction because universities aren't sure what the end is going to look like. How do you build fundamentals from something that no one has fundamentals for? I mean, and what you built fundamentals for today could be a different thing in a week. This thing's evolving so quickly, right? So it's universities aren't designed to be innovation centers. And again, I'm setting aside the research specific advanced ones, but the general universities teach fundamentals in accounting, fundamentals in business, fundamentals in finance, fundamentals in history, and whatever you're going for, those are the fundamentals. And then you go out into business with strong fundamentals, and then business picks you up and trains you with their differentiators and things that are innovative in the market. There are examples of partnerships where that's a slightly off edge. Where you get the friction is if it's a paradigm shift, and I think you just have to navigate through it. The reality is when you see universities like, for instance, what we're seeing right now is there's a little bit of rug pulling for a segment of master's degrees where they went into computer science with programming as their major, and the university's going, we're not offering that degree anymore. You're 2 to 3 years in, you need to take a hard left or hard right. I've got some students in my program that had shifted into project management and technical project management. They know enough technology to get through it. We're building at Jacksonville University vibe coding using Claude Code and a variety of other tooling because that's what's going to be tomorrow. Because the big question is, if architects come from developers who've actually coded hundreds of thousands of lines of code, and now no one's doing that anymore, where do our software architects come from? Everyone's in agreement. We're not losing those guys. But no one's described how we get them, right? So what we ran an experiment, and I think this is the approach that universities should take, is we ran an experimental class where I taught architecture. We brought in first years, second years, and close to graduating. And we taught them solid architectural principles. So SOL is the true solid architectural principles. But they didn't code. They had to use modern AI tech stacks, vibe coding, things of that nature. And we found that the first years didn't have enough under their belt to grasp the abstract constructs. So they struggled. And our third years were more in love with the code than the output, and they fought it tooth and nail, tooth and nail. And so while you could argue right or wrong, they didn't produce anything. But the middle year, they understood enough of the abstract to get the solid architectural principles, and they started to learn how to test the architectural principles with the output, right? And what I like to say is I use a narrative that gets it out of technology to help people grasp it. And this was an article I read, and I forget who wrote it, but it'll be familiar when you read it. Is he just took a selfie of himself in a t-shirt. He was a photographer, an art photographer. Like his photographs would be in a museum. And it was just a selfie and a t-shirt. And then he typed into ChatGPT or one of the tools, I forget which one it was, and described this beautiful image, stark contrast, light on one side, dark on the other, water dripping off, smoke going around the back, just stunning, stern look. And it came back and it was emotion provoking. He was like, oh my God, I'm out of a job. Right. And he walked away defeated, going, this is crazy. After about an hour of thinking about it, though, he realized, well, wait a minute. The only thing that changed was the camera. I still had to describe the lens diameter, the flaring, the box lighting. I had to describe the smoke in the back. I had to describe the entire scene. So what AI is giving us is not taking away the human. It's vastly increasing the iterative cycle. The time, like if he were to do this in real life, he would have had to put the stage together, put in a pool, put water in it, set up all the box lights, get the filters in place, have a guy waving some sort of fake smoke in the background with a backdrop, and take 1,000 pictures and maybe go into, a dark room and develop those and hope one of those pictures is what was in his head. And now he was able to do the same thing in hours, right? The artist is still there and he can still train future artists. Well, he could take that prompt and hand it to you and me, and I could take a selfie of myself and get that same thing. I couldn't create the next new piece of art, right? He did that. I don't understand all that. And just like, where's my phone? So we still say the term dialing a phone, but no one's dialed a phone in decades. My kids have never seen it, ever, right? But we still use those terms. So what he knows was a real lens on the outside of a camera will just become a term for the future artists that is fed into an AI to generate. But they know that this term does this. Just like those students in my class knew that these terms fed into AI produce this architectural output. That's where we need to change our model. And his ability to produce became just orders of magnitude of multiples, which is why it's a stewardship model. We're not taking away the people. I don't care what anyone says, people don't go away. You need that person. Because even if I set this thing as an agent and I got to that result, within seconds, entropy kicks in. The world around it's changing, and no one's told the AI about those changes. So then it starts to go off the rails, and before you know it, it's hallucinating. And I've seen too many times people go, oh, the tech's not ready. Look how it hallucinates. No, the tech is ready. The AI wants to produce an output for the task you gave it. When it hallucinates, there's only two reasons why. Either your prompt was vague or your context data source did not have data in it. So it had to imagine the gap for you to produce that output. So a steward has to have three skills, has to be clear communication on the prompt, needs to really understand the domain in which they're operating to be able to do the data, and needs to know what good looks like so it can confirm the output, because it'll be very compelling. And it's fooled some of the best and brightest when it's saying, oh, that's amazing. And then you find out, I made that up. It's not real. So that's the new skill and muscle that we as humans need to develop. We need to know what good is. So we need to understand the fundamentals. Architecture, for instance, that middle team knew what good architecture looked like and knew how to test it. And they knew how to feed this thing to get a result. And their iterative process was, and that middle team, and here's the proof in the pudding, that class is a 4-month class. They produced a capstone result at the end of the class. Now, most of their master's level capstones would do this piece of the capstone and then pass it to the next master's generation. And it might be 5-6 years before they've generated a final result. And all of the professors were like, wow, you went from original problem statement thinking to teaching fundamentals to a result capstone product you could take to market in a single class. That was the gut hit where everyone in the faculty is like, okay, we need to start planning this tool into our curriculum. We can't resist it anymore. The last story I'll tell you is, and this one comes from Elon Musk, is he's talking, take AI, take all the stuff out of it, but it shows the same kind of order of magnitude lift is, and you might be old enough to remember this, there was a day where towers of businesses would have 3 or 4 floors of financial analysts and accountants with adding machines grinding through it. And one guy with an Excel worksheet today could put that entire 3 floors of analysts out of business. It's the same thing, right? The person still is now just using this more advanced tool than Excel. That's it. And you need to start planning for that migration day because universities aren't going to churn it out for several years. right? So
Right.
businesses need to learn how to build this skill. So if you're thinking I'm going to put AI to reduce headcount, poor decision. You'll be hiring those guys back at 30% margin and you'll be losing money and not producing. Your competitor who understands the stewardship model is going to invest in their people. There's going to be a handful of people that go, I can't do this, right? We've seen it at every revolution across every industry. There's a certain amount of people that just won't. But the ones that do, you should never let go because it's going to be somewhere between 2 to 8 years of not being able to find stewards in the market. So if you then turn around and you grow all these stewards and say, I can do the same work with half my people, you're sending half of these people fully trained into your competition. Makes no sense to me.
I'm trying to see if we can find some thread that connects a few dots that you mentioned.
Okay.
For instance, you talked about architecture fundamentals needed for good governance. You
Yeah.
talked about the stewardship model where people are needed. Then you also spoke about vibe coded agents and so on, right?
Yep.
Now, I understand that you also have been successfully managing or managed mergers and acquisitions or integration of different, let's say, IT systems.
Right.
Now, when you need to integrate vibe coded agents from two different organizations, is that a nightmare or is that something that can be managed?
That's a great question. So if you've gone on the AI journey, in my humble opinion, with a strong foundation, which means you started with the morals and ethics, a governance, I call it an AI GRIF, an AI governance and risk management framework, and you have that well established. And you've got the plumbing for transparency, and you've got the plumbing for observability, and you've got all the governance rules. If you go to do a merger and acquisition and their tooling can plug into your governance model, it's going to be a beautiful thing. Agentic frameworks at the end of the day are almost commodities. I plug in a prompt, I connect MCP tools, eGraph or skills, I pick an LLM, I give it my favorite agent, and the output goes this way. I can almost take out, Azure AI Foundry and plug in, FIS Loop or plug in another agentic framework here even innate and just pluggable, right? So those aren't the challenge. But if you're merging in someone who has no governance over it, the friction is you're going to have to rebuild and re-architect that
Yeah.
all the way in to get them in. If they have one and it's comparable, it should plug right in and you just pick the governance model that is best for you and everything just plugs in and starts running on those rails. It's very interoperable today. It's shockingly so because it's all natural language. I'm just almost copying and pasting. If I want to use my agentic layer, I'll just copy your prompt. Here's all my context. Here's your MCP. Plug it in. I'm going to use my LLM. Plug it in my output. We're back in, and now everything's running under a single pane of glass. It's fantastic. But if they just went Wild West and they fell into the AI sprawl where every agent is its own vertical and you're doing this over and over again, it's like, I'm not even running at that. What do these things do for you? We're going to redo them within my governance model. Sorry. You've just made this so hard, and I'm not taking on that risk, right? The ISO 42001 standard should be where you start. Get your moral, your ethical framework, get your governance in place. That makes everything upstream so much easier. You know what your flagship vision is. You know what your do's and don'ts are. I mean, in the United States, where I live, we tend to be crisis management, right? Until there's an event, we're not going to put governance on it, right? It's just the way we run. But we're very good at it. And what are we going to do? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look around and go, okay, an event's happened. Is there something we should adopt that'll prevent the next event from happening? But we don't have preventative maintenance here in the United States. We wait for the event. So the EU AI Act is a strong one. NIST has come out with some strong governance models that you can adopt. I'm advising my North American company, customer, friends to please go ahead and put some measure of governance, even if you want to be flexible. Because here's the difference. In the United States, here's a great example. It's like for collections, aged revenue. So every business has a problem. If I have 30, 60, 90 days, that revenue's sitting out there and I got to bring it in. Boy, AI would be really good at automating the collections of that. But when you go through the EU AI Act and you say, I've got an agent that is making decisions about the person that owes the debt, is writing the communications, is talking, That is an AI using manipulative language to get someone to pay you. That's red, 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 red. You check the box all the way down. And while that may be working well for the United States, when governance or compliance or rules come down, you're going to find that you have to unwind some of that stuff. So at least put the rails in place. It's the same thing because we're on an evolving standard. So whether it's mergers and acquisitions or you don't know what 6 months from now an AI world looks like, you might want to have some kind of governance in place to allow you to adapt and adopt that compliance, or you're going to be spending a lot of money on something that you're just going to have to turn off. And that's not going to feel great.
Uh, it's a related question. Most of the time when we talk about these agentic solutions or AI, it is all about the front end, the prompt and how you interact, the results and so on. But in the context of, let's say, a merger, what about the data integration, which typically in an enterprise happens more top-down? You need a little more data governance. And then the vibe-coded agents are more bottom-up. They might be solving maybe one step of the complete process, which works for them. This is like your Excel sheet, but not necessarily supporting a workflow, right?
Yeah, it depends on the culture of your company. So I tend to pick companies into four culture baskets. You're
Okay.
risk averse, you're pragmatic, you're innovators, or you're early adopters. And I separate the innovators from the early adopters because the early adopters are more about the tech, less than the innovation. And it's just
Okay.
you either fall into one of those four categories. So depending on where you fall in that culture will almost dictate how you should adopt AI, right? So to your point, if I'm a risk averse company and I'm merging with an early adopter or an innovator and they've kind of wild west it and they're bolting things on, they're building data as they go, they like the fail fast model. That's a strong model. I'm not going to say it's wrong because it works for their culture. But know that going into the merger and acquisition of what you're buying, because you're bringing that culture into yours. If you're adopting an innovation rollout strategy and you're a risk averse company, it's going to be high friction the whole way. It's going to be painful the entire way. So, in what you just described, I find that the risk averse are very governance driven, very lean models. I'm gonna get my data in a graph database. I'm gonna know what it does. I'm gonna build a use case first, get my data, and then put the agents on top of it. The innovators are, let's come up with a use case. I like that idea, but let's build an agent. And that agent's going to tell me what I need to get built in the data because the thought of organizing my data because I'm an innovator, I've never done it, is so huge and insurmountable. I'll never get anywhere. I won't see any results. So I want to see results quickly. Let's fail fast and let's run it that way. That's to me, the innovators have a stronger, deeper need for stewards than the risk averse companies because you have to know what good looks like. You are more prone to being tricked by the AI in producing an output that looks good because you're counting on the fact that the AI is going to fail, fantastically so that you can fix the data. When it fails very elegantly and quietly, you've now put something into the wild because you couldn't see it. So my advice to the innovators and early adopters, build strong stewards and by all means go forth and do no evil. The risk averse, you're in it for the long haul. You're going to have a huge investment and you're going to have to, once you've got your foundation built, you've got all of your rails in place and your comfort levels there, then you're going to have to run fast to catch up. Here's the paradox in the AI story. And I like to call it the interstellar paradox is that if we were to put colonists onto a ship and send it to the nearest planet today, it might take 100 years to get there. And in 10 years, I would have built a ship that could get there half the time. And then so I put colonists on there and send it. And then 5 years later, I can build a ship that'll get faster than that. So I never send anybody because I can always do it faster in a few to 3 to 5 years. So you have to start putting stakes in the ground if you're a risk averse company. Otherwise, by the time you get there, so go all the way back to our camera discussion, where that guy was able to take and build a beautiful work of art that would have taken him weeks in hours. If you're in the weight game and you've got an innovator out there cutting edge, either your strategy needs to buy that guy when he blows up, because you're never going to catch him. By the time you're putting the proposal together for the new business, he's already won it and he's already servicing that account before you've even finished the first piece of paperwork to put your bid in. That's how fast business is going to run. So there's a lot of movement right now going. It's so chaotic. I don't know. Let's just wait. You won't be here. You just won't.
We covered a lot of ground, but I still would like to ask you for some career tips.
Okay.
What are segments of people, particularly when you said there are so many things that are changing? And for somebody who's considering a career in technology, or those who just are confused with whatever is happening around, the pace at which things are changing, those who go through the typical mid-career crisis.
I sit at a level in AMCS where I have the pleasure to either interview or speak to new hires, and I give them all this same advice. And then, so there's two pieces to this. Invest in people, build relationships, put your nose into things that don't belong there, just to build relationships. Still, at the end of the day, people are what's going to move business, right? So if you're in the dark playing with a piece of tech and nobody knows it, you're not going to go anywhere. So make sure that your soft skills, your people skills, your communication skills you're investing in those strengths. Then the second part is whatever your domain is, widen it. So back in the 80s, I would go into a company and there was a guy, they're like, oh, no, that's Harold. Harold built that. Don't mess with that. He's the only one that touches that. Right. And so there were generalists that lived in those businesses that helped those businesses adopt technology, whether it was a token ring network or a printer system or something. Those generalists were sort of jack of all trades, master of none. We're coming back to that. Right. This is the cycle. We're getting to the point where be very broad in your domain, but work on those three skills. If you work on your people skills, you'll be good at clarity of communication because you need to drive clarity into these agents the same way as you would another human being. But you have to understand human beings have greater context and understanding of intent than this thing does. So you might need to be a little bit different. And then know what good looks like. Understand how to measure good because treat AI like you would an intern, right? An intern's going to come in, they're very passionate, they're very excited, but they're going to make mistakes. So expect to really have to double check that work. And then once you've checked that work, they can rinse and repeat that very good until a new variable comes in that messes them up. And that's your job is to go in, figure out how to manage that variable and get that thing back on track so it's producing fast. Focus on those skill areas so you can talk about a lot, get good at a lot. You don't have to get deep, but get broadly good. But you do need to know what good looks like. Go all the way to the end so I can tell what that metric is and is it good or bad? What is it telling me? Right? Quiet failing is going to be the next big risk in business. I put an agent to be my customer service first contact, and I'm not seeing tickets come into my ticket system. So I think, yay, we're winning. And what you've missed is that your customers have rejected your agent and just stopped calling. And now you don't realize until the quarterly report to the board that your churn metrics have gone up. Understand what you're measuring. Understand what good looks like, how to get the right data to make those decisions and be clear in communication and invest in people. No matter how much we saturate agents into this world, there's still going to be people there. Get good at communicating with them because those relationships of people and trust are going to be amplified in this new world.
Yeah, very well put. I guess to understand or even visualize what good looks like, you need experience.
Yeah.
My summary after I got curious and was looking at this whole vibe coding approach, it is very similar to what you said, that AI tools could be very good thought partners and an over-enthusiastic intern. So which means that you need to really...
Very good. Yes.
When you ask them to do something, you really need to have a look at it. So one last question. Considering that when you mentioned in the pre-conversation talk that you sleep hardly 4 hours a day, and you are into so many different things, if you don't mind sharing any personal practices that help you stay grounded.
Well, protect your free time, right? Now, in a person like me, I'm a to-do lister, so this probably isn't everyone. It took me a long time that once I've sorted my list, if I get stuck on 3 to go to 4, that took a lot for me. Once I put that list in order, I tend to stick to it. It took me about 10 years to figure out how to let me resort the list. But so if you're similar to me as a to-do lister, add your free time on there. So like on the weekends, I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's a very social game. I still have my friend from 6th grade that he comes over. I've got a little tripod on a chair I could show you with the phone where he comes in to play with us. So protect that time. That's important, right? That is what you're doing this for. And love the right thing. Do reflection, right? For the longest time, I thought I loved to create. I loved creating Battle Grid. I loved creating games. I thought I was addicted to the art of creation. I'm not. I'm actually addicted to creation of value, right? I didn't think writing a book, I would like it. I loved it. And hearing what people get valuable out of it, I loved. Watching my software go outside the digital space and impact the real space and produce value, love that. I didn't think I would love teaching. Love it. In the classroom, working and grow. To see these students now making pivotal life decisions off of a conversation I've had or something they've learned in my class and escalating above it I cannot tell you the value of that. Servant leadership has changed the way that I engage people. Taking someone and lifting them up and above you on the tier it's an honor. It's a privilege that until you've done it, you don't know. So find those things, build your world around that mechanic. And to me, I build lists, I go down lists, but I protect the things that are important within those lists. And I just recently heard this. I had a different saying, but I'm adopting this new one, and I'm forgetting the person's name, so I'm embarrassed by that. But no is a complete sentence. And I just recently, it was one even know. Wait, so no is a complete sentence. You can say no. You don't have to say no, and you can just say no. I have my list. I'm doing these things. This is what I'm doing. Have a plan and strategy and stick to it. And you'd be surprised how productive you can get by just owning your time.
So on that note, Evan, thanks a lot once again for coming on the show.
I enjoyed it.
Your perspectives, I enjoyed it. I'm sure we could have gone on for more.
Yeah.
One more time. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
All right, Shiv, I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.